Does anyone think that we were promised where we are right now based on what they were saying about this 6 months ago? I mean, would anyone even try to make that case? Look at the extremes they have gone to when it comes to mandating vaccines in a variety of fashions, different places all across the country. The Biden administration putting into place a federal mandate. As we know, this is all now caught up in the courts, and there's different ways that this is going to go from a legal perspective in the weeks ahead. But, Clay, they've gotten more and more authoritarian as the results we've seen have been less and less in line with what they told us to justify the authoritarian impulse in the first place. I actually think it's interesting. I believe it was Jared Polis, the governor of Colorado.
That's right.
Who said, look, you've had the chance to get I'm not putting a mask mandate in place. And he's a Democrat, everybody, in case you don't know. I mean, this is a Democrat, a pretty liberal Democrat from what I understand. But he's also saying it's on, the perspective now he's taking is it's on you. If you don't want to get vaccinated, because this really is about personal protection now more than it is about stopping the spread. You have to be so careful. As the narrative shifts, if you get even a little bit, if you say, oh, it doesn't stop spread, then they say you're putting out disinformation. Because for a period of time, it makes infection and spread less likely. They don't know how long the period is. They don't know how much less likely. But at a macro level, it's clearly not stopping the entirety of COVID spread from the vaccinated to everybody else. That's obviously not the case. And so what are we going to do about this? I mean, Clay, we're descending further and further into the madness of what we've done before. I mean, our friend Senator Rand Paul, he's out there telling everybody, you know what? This is not going to stop until they can basically get your newborns the shot before they leave the hospital.
These people won't be happy until they get your newborn. I mean, they really want to get your newborn inoculated before they leave the hospital. They're going to restrict certain things. They're not going to dispense schooling, but they're also going to try to get them before they leave the hospital. I think it's outrageous and ignores the science. This is a disease of the elderly, not of children. And the thing is that he's not obeying science. He's sort of granting his impulse to authoritarianism. His default position is always, how can I control people? How can I regulate people?
I wish he was president. Or at least I wish he had the job that Fauci has right now. That's Dr. Rand Paul.
Could we make a COVID emperor the way Fauci is for all of us? Think of it. This little bureaucrat is the most singular and powerful voice on this issue now through 2 administrations, going on 2 years. Why? It's because people have attached a tremendous amount of political and I would even argue emotional and psychological significance to him.
I think you're right on that, Buck. And to your point earlier when you were talking about all the restrictions, New York, Philadelphia, much of the state of California, got a lot of listeners all over the place. I want to ask you this question. Has there ever been a time in most of our lives where you are in the country makes more difference as to what your life is like? I want you to think about that. Now, I wasn't alive in the 1950s and the 1960s when you had separation of the races and different aspects associated with that. I'm talking about for people like you and me who are around 40 or 50 years old. I can't think of a time where, Buck, for instance, for you get on an airplane in New York City. And when you fly down to Florida, which you're going to do in a couple of weeks, the amount of difference in what the world is like from New York and the vaccine requirements and the masking and the kids having to sit outside on stools, socially distanced and eat versus what's going on in Florida. I mean, I look at some of the restrictions that are being put in place and I feel like I live in a different country here in Tennessee than where you live right now in New York City.
It feels like that, and it's going to feel even more like that as we get deeper into the winter period here, because here's what's going to happen. New York and California, I wish, California, I believe, has a statewide
That's right, starting like the 15th, I think, December 15th.
Which is, I wish there was a place, I mean, your guy knows a lot about betting, where we could just do this. Put your money where your mouth is, so to speak. Will the mask mandate bring down the case trend in any discernible fashion in New York or California? I would put whatever money I could scrape together on the bet that it would. And by the way, I'm not trying to be flippant about the fact that cases are rising. I'm just saying the other side is wrong. They're wrong. They were wrong before. They're going to be wrong again. It's not going to do a darn thing, but it is indicative of the anxiety and the craziness. I mean, right now, I'm seeing more and more of people who are being told, even if they're in contact with someone who's COVID positive and they test negative, they're still expected to quarantine. And this is the case now. I mean, it's been the case in Australia for a while, but some companies now, I'm hearing, are taking an increasingly aggressive posture on this. Why?
Buck, I went out yesterday. I think I'm the first person to say this in regards to the world of sports. The NBA, the NFL, like for people out there who are paying attention to these organizations, the NHL that test regularly, they're about to have to shut down teams. They're shutting down teams. They're all overwhelmingly vaccinated, double vaxxed. A lot of them are boosted up too.